right. So first of all, I want to apologize that it was supposed to be a pair talk with Perlin, and she unfortunately couldn't come because of the family emergency. But on the bright side of this, I do have a very worthy replacement. This is Leon, and he is developer advocate at JFrog, so it will be a pair talk just with someone else.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to talk about data-driven DevOps, and the most important slide of this entire presentation is this one. We prepared a special page for you. It's on JFrog.com's show notes.
Absolutely.
And the slides are already there. The video is recorded. Thank you very much. So we will just link to this part of the stream. All the links are there. Whatever we're going to talk is there. A place for commenting and complaining and the stuff that we all love to do. And also a small raffle to thank you for being here. It's an Amazon Echo Dot, and you can go there, fill a form, and win it, which is pretty cool.
I would agree. So if there is any slide that you would want to take a picture of, that one would be it.
Yeah. Now, if you are still not convinced, conveniently, the link is on almost every other slide, so you will have it during your presentation. Okay, so we would like to start with a very sad story. And it's a story of cobbler's children who doesn't have shoes. First, poll time.
Yes.
How many of you are software engineers? Okay, keep them up. Keep the hands up. Keep the hands up.
Good.
How many of you are optimists? Almost everybody.
I saw hands going down. That's
but
not
not
really
a
good.
lot. But not a lot.
True.
I mean, I don't know how can you do this and not be optimist. If you're a realist, you're probably burned out already like a couple of years ago. Okay, how many of you are self-confident and think they know what they're doing? Again, it's the same hands, right? Because otherwise, why you would suffer in software? And this is what it goes to. So optimism is actually a cognitive bias. The only way you can be an optimist is when you think you are better than you really are. And that's okay. That's what all of us are.
No, I'm just really good.
Okay.
So the other thing is obviously self-confidence. And as software engineers, we tend to be somewhat over self-confident, I almost say. I mean, who here makes estimations about how long a feature is going to take of all the software engineers?
Yeah. Okay. So you're laughing. You know where this is going.
Exactly.
Right. So the consequences are there are a lot of consequences of this deadly combination of optimism and self-confidence. One of them is this. This is a Venn diagram.
And it holds true for every software developer I know. I mean, at the one hand, you have a bunch of software that you know really, really well. And at the other hand, you have software that you actually like.
And they almost never even slightly correlate to each other. Okay, the other one is this. And I guess this is something that you can refer to, right? Either you or the people who report to you or the people you work with, when being asked how your software is doing, it's 80% of the time, 80% ready, right? So, and this goes to us as well. So I did some home improvement projects, and every time my wife asked me, okay, how does it go? And I'm like, 2 hours more. And that was going for days, obviously, the 2 hours more. So it's not only software. This is who we are. This is how bad we are in our self-assessment capabilities. And that comes from this optimism and self-confidence. Sunk costs are another problem. It's very hard to give up when you start doing something, right? So you're invested in it, and you start doing it, and then probably you should quit in some point of time, but instead, we just lost this monitor as well. So, what is this? What is this picture? What is that? Stand-up
exactly.
meeting.
Yes.
Right. So and what are people doing in these stand-up meetings? Yeah, the crossing their arms. Yes, they are talking about what their progress, their problems, and basically everybody say everything is fine. we're 80% ready, right?
Absolutely. So was anyone ever in a stand-up where they said, you know what, this isn't going to work, we should do something else?
No, well,
oh,
yeah.
I see
that
a bunch
was very brave.
okay.
2 hands. Yeah, very brave. Okay, so now let's talk about the problem. And the problem is that in today's world, everything is measurable, and everybody measures something, right? Think about your organization. You have your sales organization. They probably use Salesforce or something similar. They have numbers. With sales, it's very simple. They have profits. They have, you know, how much they sold, and they talk about these numbers. Marketing, they have Marketo. They have what are sort of things?
Open rate in emails, you know, click through, that kind of stuff.
Right. So again, they talk in numbers, and they fight with sales. No, enough leads, not enough leads, all this stuff, and then support.
Zendesk, open tickets, I mean, the close time, right. How fast you are,
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
And you know, incentive and what's not. Finance, I have no idea what they are doing, but probably they have some numbers because they deal with money. And someone told me they use this NetSuite thing.
That's what I've heard too.
Right? Even HR, right? They have systems like Workday and what's the other one? Oracle has some, and you know, and they also have like, this is our funnel, this is how many applicants we have and everything. And then there is engineering. What do we have in engineering?
Anyone?
Anecdotes from daily stand-ups. Everything is 80% ready, and we are sure that everything is fine. And this is a problem, because when you speak in numbers, you can actually collaborate. As I mentioned, right? Marketing can say to sales, well, we give you enough leads, those are the numbers. And sales can tell you, no, those are bad leads, those are the numbers. All right, yep. So, and then they can fight, and they can say, yes, no, it's bad, it's good. And then engineering with their anecdotes on the daily startup, like, yeah, we think it's fine, but we don't really know. Yeah, and there is no sound, but there are at least the titles.
So I assume we've all seen Big Bang Theory, or at least I hope we do. It's an awesome show. And essentially, she talks here about feelings. And what happens if we take feelings and emotion out of stand-ups? What happens if instead of saying, yeah, I think our software is 80% ready 80% of the time, what happens if we actually start looking at numbers?
So this talk is about that. And this is Leon Stichter. He's at Leon Stichter on Twitter, and he's a developer advocate with JFrog.
And on my right-hand side, I have Jay Baruch, who is the chief sticker officer at JFrog, and also the head of developer relations.
Yeah, so follow us on Twitter. As you probably realized already, we are super entertaining and resourceful guys. We can talk over any slides, no slides, or system properties on the screen instead of slides. So you definitely should follow us right now. Conveniently, our Twitter handles are also on each and every slide, so you don't forget. Okay, so let's get started and talk about how we bring some numbers into engineering and how they relate to DevOps. So obviously, metrics in engineering are not a new thing.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the three main pieces that make up engineering, DevOps and QA, all of them had their own metrics before we started doing DevOps. I mean, if you look at the dev teams, they had things like velocity. If you look at the ops team, they had things like SLAs. If you look at the QA team, they had things like the mean time to resolve. And you know, those kind of metrics existed before we started thinking about doing DevOps.
So what actually changed, right? When we merge all three of them together, and the color that you see on the screen, it's not my choice. It's just I literally merged those three colors together, and it is what it is, and you can make your own conclusions. So what is this metric that now appears when we blend everything together? We have such a global metric in development before that, and that was velocity, right? We knew how to measure development part of the house using velocity. So what is this magic metric for DevOps?
So that magic thing is called profit. I mean, velocity is to Agile like profit to DevOps.
And it's true that not everybody work on the for-profit company, but even in the non-profit company or government organization, there is some kind of efficiency that in the end of the day, we measure in money spent versus money gained or saved. And this is it. In the end of the day, we're all here to make the right thing, to release the software faster to our customers and get feedback from them in way of money that they pay for our software, or adoption, or anything else like that. So this is kind of the very big picture. And it's a lot like this magic velocity number, because it's easily understandable with velocity. Okay, we ship faster features. And with profit also, like we do better software and people are ready to use it, whether paying money for it or anything else.
And obviously, the same holds true for Unity. I mean, everyone understands. When we talk about velocity in a software organization, everyone knows what we're talking about. If we talk about profit in pretty much any company, everyone knows what we're going to talk about.
So the previous poll was great, but this one is going to be even better because now I'm going to explain the rules. And the rules are you vote and then you keep your hands up. Okay? This is how it works. Until the answer no longer applicable for you. And then you can take it down. Okay, so who knows what velocity is? The velocity that I mentioned. Okay, hands up, hands up, hands up. Who knows what the burn down chart is? If you don't know what it is, this is where you take it down. You still know it, okay? Who knows who has a burn down chart in their organization? Okay, same hands. That's magic.
No, I actually saw a few going down. So
who looks at the burn down chart? Okay, now people start taking their hands down. That's okay. That's okay. And now, who trusts their burn down chart? Even less hands, and that's for a reason, because you know how things are getting there. Everything is fine, and everything is 80% ready 80% of the time. How about who knows what to do when the burn down chart doesn't look right? Okay, so we still have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, couple of hands. And this is good, but the majority of you now have their hands down. Thank you very much for everybody. And that the problem, what is the problem? Why most of the people have no idea what to do when the burn down chart doesn't look right?
So, and the problem has to do with velocity. I mean, if you look at, and if you could skip one slide for me, please. Thank you. Then everything has to do with action. I mean, if the burn down chart doesn't look right, what are you going to do? Nobody knows. If your profit doesn't look right, what are you going to do? Well, hopefully the answer to that, by the way, is sell more software.
And fire people?
I hope not.
Yeah, okay. Right. So the problem with those kind of metrics is that they are too coarse, right? They are too big to have actionable items when something doesn't look right. And this too coarse approach, when we try to find this one magic metric for DevOps, is because this definition of DevOps that we take everything and blend it together, and now we have those mythical unicorn people that know everything. This is not what we have in reality. In reality, instead, we have this. This is DevOps. If you are not Netflix, and you're not.
Is there anyone from Netflix here?
No.
Good.
Okay, good. So that works.
Yeah.
And that basically means that we have common goals, common tools, common culture. That's what DevOps is about. But we also still have this deep specialization. And people who know, I don't know, like Terraform inside out, not necessarily the people who write the most elegant code. And the other way around, people who do write excellent code with extreme velocity, not necessarily knows how Kubernetes works.
Absolutely true.
And also, they collaborate with each other. That's the essence of DevOps. Now, the magic is that it's exactly the same for metrics.
Absolutely. So profit is something that is incredibly important to all of those teams. It's important to the ops, to the dev, to the QA, and all of them have their own specialized metrics.
And they do collaborate between them, and this is the new part. The real difference between the metrics in the pre-DevOps era and the metrics that we're going to show you today is that the impact of other teams is now acknowledged, right? Whatever ops does affects QA and dev, and everybody realized that. And here's a couple of examples of how metrics collaborate.
Absolutely. So if you look at how ops and dev collaborate, then the ops team builds builds pipelines, and that obviously affects things like time to build.
And this is something that the dev deeply care about, so this is how they know how to integrate. The other example is, that's too small to read. Let's take another one here. Average cost of customer. One of the things that affect on average cost of customer is how the code is written. If my code is not performant enough, my code will require more hardware and more resources to run, right? It is affected by whoever writes code, but people who pay the price are the people who set up your cloud resources or your data center resources. And understanding that I cannot write my code in vacuum, and just because it was easier for me to write and I don't care what an added cost I added to the operation side, this is what's new, and this is what should actually be changed when we transition from isolated metrics to metrics in DevOps.
Absolutely.
And there are a couple of examples, but you got the gist. And also, obviously, this table is on the slides, which here in the show notes page on jeffrey.com/show-notes. Yay. Okay, let's talk a little bit about details, about what metrics exist and how we actually cook our software with metrics.
So when you look at metrics, all of the metrics that we've been talking about so far pretty much break down in different categories. Like you would open a cookbook and look at the different recipes and the different ingredients that you need. So first question is why?
Why do we do whatever we do? And there are three different types of assessing why. The first is, how do we know that we are doing the right thing, right? If I run a restaurant, how do I know that my restaurant is better than my neighbors? Sometimes it's very obvious, and this is one of the examples. That's the first McDonald's in Moscow in 1989. My sister is somewhere there in the line waiting for three hours to get in. And obviously McDonald's is better than every Soviet restaurant because we can look at the metrics, and it's pretty clear that we are doing the right thing. And we are McDonald's opening a restaurant in Moscow. Those are our metrics. There are other reasons why we measure something.
So the other reason why we measure stuff is for continuous improvement. I mean, we want to be continuously better, not just as a person, but also with our software. And for that, we need to measure stuff.
And the third is, and here I had really hard time finding a good illustration, trust and food. The only thing I could think about is those tasters that would try the food of the king so he wouldn't be poisoned. It's a really bad illustration if I need to explain it for half a minute, right?
I guess so, yes.
So, yeah, but another reason why we measure is building trust. If we continuously deliver on the numbers that we promised and the numbers that we see in reality, this is how we build trust within our organization, and other people and other aspects of DevOps can actually trust us when we promise something.
So next question that is incredibly important is sampling. I mean, there are a few types of sampling to get the data that we're interested in, and let's actually look at some of those.
And it actually has to do with the why, obviously, how we select the sample. So the first one is complete sample. You go to the grocery store and you take 5 oranges. You want to look at each and every one of them and check that there are no flaws in each and every one of them. And a concrete sample is mandatory for stuff like the ROI type of metric. If we want to check if going to DevOpsDays Baltimore with the sponsoring booth actually makes sense for JFrog, we need to take all the sales that we made as a result of this booth and compare it to the effort that we made to come here, flying ticket, our time, and its cost of sponsorship and what's not. But we need to know everything about it. This is a complete sample.
So my absolute favorite tool to create those samples has to be Microsoft Excel.
And that's a complicated one. I'm not sure everybody can, everything you can do in Excel, or what you cannot do in your IDE, you probably can do in Excel.
Probably, true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the other metric that, or the other way to sample that is incredibly important, it has to do with representative samples. I mean, has to do with quality. If you run a cookie factory, you're not going to sample each and every cookie simply because you want to make sure that everything's okay. No, you're going to take a representative sample and look at maybe 1 or 2 cookies in a batch. And the same thing holds true for continuous improvement. You're not going to measure everything all the time simply because you can. You're going to look at a representative part of what you do and make improvements and guesses based on that.
And that will be representative, and that's fine for it to be representative. If you want to understand whether a DevOps data-driven DevOps talk is more successful than the talk that we did last year, we will look at the representative sample. How many people tweeted about it, how many people told that it is good, how many people complain and everything, and compare it with the same results from other talks. Obviously, not all of you are going to interact with us and give us your feedback, but if we can say, okay, this sample is representative enough, that's good enough, right? So here's sample are good enough for that, and as long as they are representative. The thing is we need to compare samples with other samples, so it has to be done over time.
Yeah. And as you look at predicting the future, which is absolutely my favorite slide here, then all of the things that we've talked about so far kind of come into play. I mean, in order to create a baseline to predict the future on, you need to have a good set of metrics. And in order to be able to predict, you need to be able to continuously measure your samples and upgrade them, enhance your algorithms.
And then it should be over time. So let's look at a couple of examples, and we'll take a fictional Scrum team here, Scrum Team Avengers. You might recognize this picture and the people on it, and I consider it the perfect timing, and you know what's going to happen this weekend, so yes, that is perfect.
Right?
Right. Okay, who already have the tickets for this weekend? What? Okay, you won't get them, they're all sold out. Okay, so now let's see how we can take those anecdotes from daily stand-ups and actually do something meaningful with those anecdotes with data.
So, for example, if you are part of the QA team, then you could go and say, you know what, we never get enough testing environments. Our ops team, I don't know what they're doing, but they never give us enough. So, as a result, QA is suffering. Quality of our product is suffering.
So here is an anecdote that we can take on face value, or we can try and do something with data. So first, we need to gather some data, and we can do it very easily. We can use Microsoft Excel to verify how many available environments and how many total environments exist. And if we do that, we can actually see that there is a problem. You can see there are like the orange is total number of environments, 10, and they are almost always saturated. So this is right. The anecdote proves to be right. The question is, how do we solve it? And here, data can help as well.
Absolutely. So the data that we want to gather is who are the people in our team that keep those environments checked out all the time. And I'm guessing, looking at the slide, that everyone that is on the other side of you, Baruch, should be fired.
Yeah, exactly, yes. So jokes aside, we don't want to look at people. Instead, we want to look at their behavior. And we see that most of the people never give those environments back. They check them out, and they keep them open for tons of time. So what can we do? And what we can do is a very simple trick with technology. We can automatically return their environments if they are not in use. And that's exactly what you see here. You can see how in the beginning we allocated a little bit more to check that people can work, and they are still saturated immediately. But then when we implement the automatic return, we can see that not only we get back to the level of 10 environments, we actually managed to save some money and going to 8, and still we have available environments with knowing what to do and a simple trick. Another example.
So let's look at testing. I mean, tests are failing simply because the test suite isn't stable enough. By the way, who has ever said that the test suite isn't stable enough? Okay, a few. That's good. That's good. So QA makes our builds fail for no reason whatsoever.
And obviously, this is something that you remember how they collaborate, and this is it. And what we need to do, as usual, we need to gather some data. And this is very easily done with any kind of tracking tool. We use Jira and JFrog, so we created a new type, which is builds with stability. And every time that this is why the build fails, we will file an issue against it, and we will know what happened. And if that's the case, if we have a lot of issues, we just need to fix the problem. And
the good thing is that if we keep track of that, and if we keep doing that continuously, then we can see what is happening with the quality and with the stability of our test suites. So here you see it going up a bit, which means that we have to pay a bit more attention to our tests. And then pretty much at like 75% in, you see that it's flattening out. So that means our test suite is now stable.
And there are almost no new issues created, or not issues at all, right? Another example is about building trust, right? So let's say a Java shop and the developers want to introduce a new groundbreaking garbage collector like Shenandoah or whatever. And the people who run the ops and who run their cloud environments or the data centers, they're not eager to do that because it usually has no impact on what they care about. But if people who thought about it and who think it's a good idea is going to introduce some data, then the conversation might change.
Absolutely, and the simple reason is that in this case, data is incredibly important. I mean, who can predict what the garbage collector will do? That's the dev team. The dev team will be able to tell you how many resources are you going to save. And if you have some data, let's bring it.
And actually, once it's introduced in the production, you can see the impact. That was one of the biggest social networks with huge loads. They introduced this new garbage collector, and you can see how the garbage collection pauses were just flattened. So obviously, the prediction was correct. Okay, we have a couple of more minutes, so we need to speed up, and we'll do do's and don'ts now, and we're towards the end.
So do absolutely measure the right thing.
Measuring the easy thing is very tempting because it's easy to measure. What's the most ridiculous measurement in engineering, software engineering that you know? Lines of code, obviously. Lines of code, that's a very simple metric to measure and a very wrong metric to measure because it has nothing to do with quality, velocity, time to market, and eventually profit.
So the other thing is avoid data overload. I mean, data is useless if you do not turn it into information.
And more so, gathering this data, analyzing this data, and outputting this data is very costly. So you need to know what you are measuring, why you are measuring that, and what are the actions that you can take out of this.
So use reliable data. Because if you cannot trust, coming back to some of the stuff we talked about, if you cannot trust your data, again, your data is going to be meaningless.
Right, and that's very important, especially with sampling, right, with sample data, because you have less data and it needs to be more trustworthy. And I gave this example of how we are going to analyze if this talk was good or not. If Leon is going to praise this talk, that's not a very reliable data.
Thank you. I would say that I'm relatively reliable.
Now this is my favorite slide of this talk, and take a second to read it through.
So who has not seen this within their organization?
So that's something that we all naturally incline to. We establish metrics without thinking of how the incentives are going to change the behavior. And one of my two favorite phrases in DevOps and software engineering in general, first is pain is instructional, and second, incentives generate behavior. So you need to remember that when you put goals, you put KPIs, you start to collect numbers, humans will optimize for those numbers. Lines of code, as we spoke, one of the reasons why it's so bad of a metric, it generates the incentive of writing more lines of code just for the purpose of this metric. So remember that.
Then tweak as you go. I mean, if you have all of that data available, if you have the information, if you know what you want to act on, only then can you start making tweaks to your test suite, to your code, and still continue to measure if it actually improves your bottom line.
And you remember how we said data collection and data and paying attention to data is expensive? Our test with stability example, once we actually manage to flat it and it's not an issue anymore, we don't need to look at this graph anymore every day. We just need to make sure that nothing happens down the road, but we can lower the attention and the cost of data collection, of data analysis for the things which are not critical for us in this point of time.
So it all comes back to how do you elevate, how do you get from raw data to actionable insights?
This is about, again, the attention that we can put in the data, right? You can look at every commit, which is obviously going to be very costly in terms of time and your attention. You can elevate to using dashboards, to using more general information, or, and this is where we give our 15 seconds shameless plug for JFrog. You can go to stuff that collects the data together, something like, I don't know why I have it twice, but something like this. That's a screenshot for JFrog Insight. There are other tools, but the whole idea here is that if you can look at the big picture, it's cheaper than look at any small particular piece of data or even a dashboard which is in each and every tool. So with that, this is how you get rid of people ignoring you when you tell your anecdotes from daily stand-ups, bring numbers, and I hope some tips that we gave you actually helpful. Data-driven live removes blame game. It's not more about, oh, you break my build. No, we actually know what's going on. Build accountability and trust, because we have numbers that we can speak about, creates common base for a discussion, and basically enables the culture of togetherness that we call DevOps.
So as we started our talk, obviously follow Baruch on Twitter, follow at Leon Stichter on Twitter, tweet obviously the stuff that that we just talked about with either the hashtag or the at DevOpsDays Baltimore.
We have official
DevOps.
data-driven DevOps hashtag that we just invented, and you remember jeffrog.com/show notes. This is where you go for slides and videos and everything else. That will be all. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your lunch.
Swamp up.
Oh, yes, absolutely, that's correct. So in June 17 to 19, we have our annual user conference in San Francisco, and because we enjoy so much being here, we wanted to give you a special discount offer. So if you go to bit.ly/swampup-bmore, then you get a 20% discount code to attend Swamp Up this year.
Okay, lunch.
And now lunch.
Yeah, lunch. Thank you very much.